The gold leaf in the vintage frame caught the morning light as I removed my mother's portrait from the wall. 3 years since her passing, yet her disapproving gaze still followed me through the house. I placed the frame into a cardboard box, swathing it in tissue paper as if softening a blow. My phone vibrated against the hardwood floor where I'd abandoned it an hour earlier. Cecily. Again. My name is Diana Thornfield, and 3 years ago, my younger sister set her sights on the one person she knew would wound me most, James, my ex-fiancé. I ignored the call, as I had the previous 7. The moving truck would arrive in less than 2 hours, and half the house remained untouched. 3 years in this Victorian monstrosity, my inheritance and my prison. Now it was time to let go. The phone buzzed again. This time, a text message appeared on the screen. Diana, please. I know you're there. It's important. James has done something terrible. I stared at the words, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. Of course he had. James Harrington had been doing terrible things since the day I caught him with my paralegal. The same day I discovered the first of his many financial indiscretions. Yet Cecily had chosen not to believe me. Had chosen him instead. Another text appeared. I need my big sister. Please. The vulnerability in those 5 words pierced my carefully constructed wall of indifference. Despite everything, she was still my baby sister, the gap-toothed girl who had once followed me everywhere, who had cried when I left for college, who had somehow lost her way in the shadow of our mother's impossible expectations. I sighed, picking up the phone. What did he do this time? I asked, skipping any greeting. Diana. Her voice cracked on the second syllable of my name. I found something. Bank statements. Transfers. I don't understand what's happening, but there's so much money in. Slow down, Cecily. What transfers? Regular payments. Large ones. Coming from an account I've never seen before. The name on the account is Thornfield Holdings. The blood drained from my face as I sank onto a nearby packing crate. Thornfield Holdings, the private corporation I'd established after Mother's death to manage her estate. The one whose existence was known only to me and my financial advisor. How much money are we talking about? I managed to ask, my voice unnaturally steady. $17,000. Every month for the past 3 years. The timeline wasn't lost on me. 3 years since I'd ended things with James. 3 years since Cecily had announced their relationship at Mother's funeral reception. 3 years of silent, seething resentment while my sister flaunted her happiness with the man who had nearly destroyed me. Where are you? I asked. At Marlowe's cafe. James thinks I'm meeting the wedding planner. Wedding planner. The words seared through me like a hot blade. I'd known they were engaged. Cecily had sent a save-the-date card that still sat unopened on my mantel, but hearing it spoken aloud reopened wounds I'd thought long healed. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, then ended the call before she could respond. I looked around at the half-packed house. The movers would have to wait. First, I needed to understand how James had managed to steal from me for 3 years without detection. And why my sister was only now discovering the truth. As I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, Mother's portrait caught my eye once more, peeking from its tissue paper shroud. She'd always said Cecily was too trusting, too eager to see the good in people. I had dismissed it as another of her criticisms, a way to pit us against each other. But perhaps, in this one instance, Mother had been right. Marlowe's cafe sat nestled between a bookstore and an artisanal bakery on the main street of our small town. It had been our refuge as teenagers, a place mother deemed acceptable for young ladies of our standing. Now, it was neutral territory in the Cold War Cecily and I had been waging since mother's death. I spotted her immediately, huddled in the farthest corner booth, her normally immaculate appearance in disarray. Her chestnut hair, usually styled to perfection, was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and the dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept. Diana. She stood when she saw me, uncertainty clouding her features. Thank you for coming. I slid into the booth across from her, acutely aware of the stares from the other patrons. The Thornfield sisters, together again. Undoubtedly, the gossip mill was already churning. Show me, I said, dispensing with pleasantries. Cecily pushed a folder across the table. I found it in his home office. In a locked drawer. You broke into his desk? I couldn't help the hint of admiration that crept into my voice. The Cecily I knew would never have done something so brazen. She nodded, a flash of the old defiance in her eyes. Something felt off. He's been secretive. Anxious. I thought maybe. Her voice trailed off. You thought he was cheating, I finished for her. Like he did with me. Cecily flinched but didn't deny it. I never believed you when you said. Save it, I cut her off, opening the folder. Let's focus on the matter at hand. The bank statements were meticulously organized, arranged by date. Each month, on the 15th, a transfer from Thornfield Holdings to an account in the Cayman Islands. From there, the money was routed to James's personal account. $17,000. Every month. For 3 years. How did he get access to the holding company? Cecily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer immediately, my mind racing through possibilities. James had been my fiancé, yes, but I'd never involved him in my financial affairs. After Mother died, I'd handled the estate myself, with only my trusted financial advisor, Martin Reeves, assisting. Martin. Could he be involved? I don't know, I admitted finally. But I intend to find out. Cecily's fingers fidgeted with her engagement ring, a 3-carat diamond that suddenly seemed grotesque in its ostentation. He told me he'd been saving for years. For our future. For the house. She looked up, tears brimming. The down payment on our house came from your money, didn't it? I consulted the statements again, finding a large withdrawal that coincided with the purchase of their Tudor-style dream home 6 months earlier. The home Cecily had pointedly invited me to see. The home I had declined to visit. It would appear so, I confirmed, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Along with the Audi, I presume. And the vacations to Lake Como and the Maldives. Each expense had featured prominently on Cecily's social media, a digital shrine to her perfect life with James. I didn't know, she whispered, tears now spilling freely. You have to believe me, Diana. I never would have. Wouldn't you? The question escaped before I could stop it, years of hurt bubbling to the surface. You took him, Cecily. You knew what he'd done to me, and you took him anyway. Her face crumpled. I loved him. I thought he'd changed. Men like James don't change. They just find new victims. A tense silence fell between us, broken only by the ambient noise of the cafe. The weight of our shared history, of betrayal and resentment and the shadow of our mother's toxic influence, pressed down on us like a physical force. What do we do now? Cecily finally asked, wiping her eyes with a napkin. I closed the folder, my decision made. I'm calling the police. The police? Alarm flashed across her face. Diana, no. There has to be another way. He's stolen over $500,000 from me, Cecily. This isn't about you or me or our issues. This is a crime. But the scandal. The scandal? I laughed incredulously. You're worried about appearances? After everything? It's not just that, she protested. If this gets out, my career. Your interior design business will survive, I said dismissively. It's not just a business anymore, she countered, sudden steel in her voice. I'm being considered for the Historical Society's renovation project. The Whitmore Mansion, Diana. It's everything I've worked for. I paused, recognizing the passion in her eyes. Despite our differences, Cecily's talent for design was undeniable. The Whitmore project was prestigious, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that would cement her reputation in the industry. And you think being associated with a criminal would help your chances? I asked, more gently this time. No. But if we could handle this quietly. She leaned forward, her voice urgent. Give me time to figure things out. To confront him. Maybe there's an explanation. An explanation for stealing $500,000? I scoffed. Don't be naive, Cecily. That's what got you into this mess in the first place. She recoiled as if I'd slapped her, and in a way, I had. But the truth was the truth, however painful. 3 days, she pleaded. Give me 3 days before you go to the police. Please, Diana. I studied my sister's face, the desperation, the fear, but also the determination. For the first time in years, I saw a glimmer of the Cecily I remembered, the one who had stood up to our mother when I was too afraid, the one who had defended me against high school bullies despite being 2 years younger. 3 days, I agreed reluctantly. But this stays between us. And if he runs? He won't, she assured me quickly. He can't know that I suspect anything. I'll put everything back in his office. Act normal. And then what? I'll find out how he did it. And why. Her voice hardened. And then we'll decide what to do. I nodded, though doubt gnawed at me. Cecily had always worn her heart on her sleeve, transparent as glass. Could she really deceive the man she was planning to marry? As if reading my thoughts, she reached across the table and gripped my hand, the first physical contact between us in 3 years. I can do this, Diana. I need to do this. Not just for you, but for me. I squeezed her hand once before letting go, a silent acknowledgement of the fragile truce we'd established. 3 days for Cecily to uncover the truth. 3 days before I would have James Harrington arrested for embezzlement. 3 days to prepare for the scandal that would inevitably follow. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from the moving company, asking if I'd be ready in an hour. I texted back a delay request. My plans to leave Millfield would have to wait. I had unfinished business to attend to first. The following morning, I called in sick to the law firm where I'd been a partner for 5 years. A first for me, which prompted concerned texts from my assistant and a wry comment from my fellow partner, Marcus, about hell freezing over. I ignored them all. I had more pressing concerns. My first stop was Martin Reeves's office in downtown Millfield. Martin had been Mother's financial advisor for decades and had seamlessly transitioned to managing my affairs after her death. If there was a security breach in Thornfield Holdings, he would be my starting point. Martin's receptionist, a woman who'd worked for him for as long as I could remember, greeted me with surprise. Ms. Thornfield. We weren't expecting you today. It's an urgent matter, I explained. Is Martin available? She checked her computer. He's with a client at the moment, but he should be finished in about. This can't wait, I interrupted, already moving toward his office. Miss Thornfield, you can't just. I ignored her protests, pushing open the heavy oak door to Martin's inner sanctum. Inside, Martin sat behind his massive desk, engaged in conversation with a middle-aged woman I didn't recognize. Both looked up in surprise at my intrusion. Diana? Martin stood quickly. What's going on? I need to speak with you, I said, my voice clipped. Now. The woman turned, affronted by my interruption, but Martin quickly smoothed things over. Mrs. Davenport, please accept my apologies. Perhaps we could reschedule for tomorrow? Once the client had been ushered out, Martin closed the door and turned to me, concern etched in the lines around his eyes. This must be serious for you to barge in like that. Thornfield Holdings has been compromised, I stated without preamble. Someone has been making unauthorized transfers for the past 3 years. Martin's face drained of color. That's impossible. The security protocols are clearly insufficient, I finished, pulling Cecily's copies of the bank statements from my bag and spreading them across his desk. $17,000. Every month. Like clockwork. He reached for his glasses, studying the documents with growing alarm. I don't understand how this could happen. That's what I'm here to find out, I said, watching his reaction carefully. Who has access to these accounts besides you and me? No one, he insisted. That's the point of the holding company structure. Privacy and security. Then explain these, I demanded, pointing to the statements. Martin ran a hand through his thinning hair, genuine distress on his face. I can't. But I promise you, Diana, I will get to the bottom of this. I'll call the bank immediately, launch an internal investigation. No, I cut him off. No banks, no investigations. Not yet. His brow furrowed in confusion. But if there's been a security breach. I know who's behind it, I admitted. James Harrington. Understanding dawned in Martin's eyes. Your ex-fiancé? The one who? Yes, I confirmed, not needing the reminder of James's infidelity. What I don't know is how he gained access. Or who helped him. Martin's expression hardened. If you're implying that I had anything to do with this. Did you? The question hung between us, sharp as a blade. Absolutely not, he said, indignation radiating from every pore. I've served your family for 30 years, Diana. Your mother trusted me implicitly. My mother trusted no one, I corrected. And neither do I. I gathered the statements, replacing them in my bag. I'm giving you 3 days to provide an explanation, Martin. After that, I go to the police. The police won't be necessary, he assured me quickly. I'll figure out how this happened. You have my word. I left his office with more questions than answers. Martin's shock had seemed genuine, but years of practicing law had taught me that people could be convincing liars when their livelihoods were at stake. My next stop was the bank that housed Thornfield Holdings accounts. Though I had the authority to demand answers, I maintained the pretense of a routine check-in, not wanting to alert James if he had an accomplice within the institution. The branch manager, Elaine Wilson, greeted me warmly. Miss Thornfield, what a pleasant surprise. How can I help you today? I'm reviewing some of my accounts, I explained smoothly. Specifically, the security protocols for Thornfield Holdings. She nodded, typing into her computer. Of course. Everything appears to be in order. The dual authentication system is active, and there have been no unauthorized access attempts. Dual authentication? I repeated, my interest piqued. Can you tell me when that was implemented? She checked the records. 3 years ago, according to our system. You authorized it yourself. She turned the screen toward me, showing a document bearing what appeared to be my signature. I leaned forward, studying the signature carefully. It was a good forgery, close enough to fool someone who didn't know the distinctive way I crossed my T's. But it wasn't mine. And who else has authorization for these accounts? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Just you and Martin Reeves, as per the original agreement, Elaine confirmed. Though there is a notation about a special directive regarding automatic transfers. My heart skipped a beat. What special directive? She pulled up another document. A standing order authorized 3 years ago. Monthly transfers to an offshore account. Again, my forged signature appeared at the bottom. I'd like copies of all these documents, I said, my mind racing to connect the dots. For my records. Of course. She smiled, oblivious to the fraud I'd just uncovered. I'll have those prepared right away. As I waited, my phone buzzed with a text from Cecily. He's acting strange. Asked about my meeting with the wedding planner yesterday. I think he knows something. I texted back quickly. Stay calm. Act normal. I'm making progress. When Elaine returned with the copies, I thanked her and left, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to take shape in my mind. James had managed to forge my signature on bank documents right after our breakup, a time when I was distracted by Mother's death and the subsequent estrangement from Cecily. But he couldn't have done it alone. Someone had helped him navigate the complex security systems of both the bank and Thornfield Holdings. The question was, who? By late afternoon, I had retreated to the Victorian house, the home I'd been planning to leave behind before Cecily's revelation. Boxes remained half-packed in every room, a physical manifestation of my interrupted life. I cleared a space at the dining room table, spreading out all the evidence I'd gathered throughout the day. Bank documents with forged signatures. Account statements showing the monthly transfers. Dates, times, amounts, all meticulously recorded. James had always been careful with details. It was one of the things that had drawn me to him initially. As a corporate lawyer, I appreciated his methodical nature. Now, that same trait made him a formidable adversary. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I tensed, not expecting visitors. Through the leaded glass panels, I recognized Cecily's slight figure and opened the door. "What are you doing here?" I asked, glancing past her to the street. "Is James?" "He's at a client dinner," she said, slipping inside. I told him I had a migraine. Her gaze swept over the half-packed boxes. "You're moving?" "I was planning to," I confirmed, leading her to the dining room. "California. New job, new start." "You weren't going to tell me?" Hurt flashed in her eyes. "Would you have cared?" I asked bluntly. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, the question hanging unanswered between us. "I found something," she said instead, pulling a small notebook from her purse. "James keeps a record of all his passwords in his desk. Old school." Her attempt at a smile fell flat. I copied down anything that looked relevant. I took the notebook, impressed despite myself. "Clever. I'm not as helpless as you think, Diana," she said, a hint of the old defiance in her voice. "I never thought you were helpless," I corrected. "Just willfully blind." "Fair enough," she conceded, taking a seat at the table. Her eyes widened as she took in the spread of documents. What is all this? Evidence, I explained, pointing to the forged signatures. James somehow managed to set up automatic transfers from Thornfield Holdings 3 years ago, right after Mother's funeral. Cecily paled. That's when we started dating. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? She didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the documents. These signatures, they look like yours. They're forgeries, I said. Good ones, but forgeries nonetheless. But how did he get access to your accounts in the first place? She asked, confusion evident in her furrowed brow. That's the million-dollar question, I said grimly. Or in this case, the $500,000 question. I turned my attention to the notebook Cecily had brought, flipping through pages of passwords, account numbers, and other sensitive information. Something caught my eye, a notation marked TH Special Project with a string of numbers and letters that didn't match the pattern of the other passwords. What's this? I asked, pointing to the entry. Cecily leaned over to look. I'm not sure. It was in a separate section, almost like a code. I studied the sequence, a thought forming. Not a code, I murmured. Coordinates. Using my phone, I converted the numbers to GPS coordinates. They led to a location in the Cayman Islands, specifically, a bank known for its discretion and privacy. The offshore account, I realized. These are directions to access the account where he's been hiding the money. Cecily's eyes widened. Can you get it back? Possibly, I said, already formulating a plan. But first, we need to understand how deep this goes. Who helped him? Who else might be involved? I looked up to find her watching me, a mixture of admiration and apprehension on her face. What? I asked. You're scary when you're like this, she admitted. All lawyer mode. I almost smiled. This is what I do, Cecily. I find the truth. Even when it hurts, she asked softly. Especially then, I confirmed. The truth doesn't care about our feelings. She nodded, accepting this hard reality. So what's our next move? Our next move, I emphasized, including her in the plan, is to follow the money trail. These bank coordinates are our best lead. But how? We can't exactly fly to the Cayman Islands in the next 3 days. We don't need to, I assured her. I have contacts who can help us remotely. Discreetly. Cecily hesitated, then asked the question I'd been dreading. And what happens when we find the money? When we have all the evidence? That's up to you, I said, surprising myself with the concession. If you still want to marry him after learning the truth. I don't, she interrupted, her voice firm. I already know enough. He stole from you, Diana. He lied to me. Used me. Her voice broke on the last words. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine, a gesture of compassion I hadn't anticipated making. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said, squeezing my hand in return. I'm the one who should be apologizing. I chose him over you. I believed him when he said you were exaggerating about the cheating, about his gambling problem. I was so desperate to have what you had, the successful career, the perfect relationship. I never stopped to think that maybe it wasn't so perfect after all. The honesty of her words caught me off guard. For 3 years, I'd nurtured my resentment, allowing it to grow into a wall between us. Now, faced with her raw vulnerability, I found that wall beginning to crumble. We can't change the past, I said finally. But perhaps we can still shape the future. She nodded, understanding the olive branch for what it was, not forgiveness, not yet, but a starting point. So, what do we do about James? She asked, straightening her shoulders. I smiled, a predatory expression that had served me well in courtrooms across the country. First, we gather all the evidence. Then, we confront him together. And then? And then, I said, my voice hardening, he pays for what he's done. Every penny. Every lie. Every moment of happiness he stole from both of us. Cecily's expression matched mine, a steely determination replacing her earlier uncertainty. In that moment, I saw echoes of our mother, not the critic or the manipulator, but the fighter who had built Thornfield Industries from nothing, who had faced down boardrooms full of men who underestimated her. Perhaps some of her strength had been passed down to both her daughters after all. Let's get to work, Cecily said, rolling up her sleeves. And for the first time in 3 years, the Thornfield sisters were truly aligned. The next day dawned with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since taking on the Mercer case, a high-profile corporate espionage trial that had cemented my reputation in the legal community. Cecily had returned to the house she shared with James, armed with a plan and a renewed confidence. Her task was to monitor James while continuing to gather evidence from his home office. My role was more complex. I needed to access the offshore account, trace the money back to its source, and create an irrefutable paper trail connecting James to the theft. I reached out to an old law school friend, Noah Winters, now a cybersecurity expert with connections in international banking. Our conversation was brief and cryptic, too many details could put him at risk if things went south. I need access to a private account, I explained over a secure line. Cayman Islands. I have the coordinates and likely password combinations. Diana, Noah's voice was cautious, what exactly are you into here? Someone stole from me, I said simply. I want what's mine. A pause. This isn't about the Anderson case, is it? No, I assured him, referencing a past collaboration. This is personal. Another pause, longer this time. Send me what you have. I'll see what I can do. But Diana. I know, I cut him off. Discretion is key. No electronic trails. Exactly. We ended the call, and I immediately sent the GPS coordinates and password combinations from Cecily's notebook via a secure messenger app that deleted conversations after they were read. While waiting for Noah's response, I turned my attention to Martin Reeves. If James had managed to forge my signature on bank documents, someone at Martin's firm might be involved. I needed to identify the weak link without alerting James. I decided on a direct approach, calling Martin's office and requesting a meeting with his entire team. When his receptionist asked for a reason, I cited a security review of all Thornfield accounts, vague enough to avoid suspicion, specific enough to ensure all relevant personnel would be present. Within 2 hours, I sat across from Martin and his 4-person team in the firm's conference room. I studied each face carefully as I outlined my concerns about account security, watching for signs of nervousness or evasion. 3 of the team members appeared genuinely engaged and concerned. The 4th, a young man named Alex Lambert, avoided eye contact and fidgeted with his pen throughout the meeting. I made a mental note to investigate Alex further. As the meeting concluded, Martin pulled me aside. Diana, I've been looking into the security breach. I think I might have found something. Oh? I kept my voice neutral, not wanting to show my hand. There were unauthorized access attempts 3 years ago, attempts that didn't trigger our usual security protocols. I've traced them to a specific IP address. He handed me a slip of paper. My tech team is still investigating, but I thought you should know immediately. I glanced at the paper, recognizing the IP address format. Thank you, Martin. This is helpful. Diana, he lowered his voice, if James Harrington is behind this, you need to be careful. Men who steal usually have more to hide. His concern seemed genuine, but I'd learned the hard way not to take appearances at face value. I appreciate your concern. I'll be in touch. As I left the building, my phone buzzed with a message from Noah, a secure link that would expire in 1 hour. I hurried back to my car, opened my laptop, and clicked the link. Noah had worked his magic. Before me were the details of the offshore account, balance, transaction history, account holders. The primary name on the account was JH Investments, an obvious reference to James. But there was a secondary name, one that made my blood run cold, Lambert Consulting. Alex Lambert. Martin's nervous team member. The pieces were falling into place. James had used Alex to gain access to the Thornfield Holdings accounts, likely through Martin's firm's back channels. With Alex's help, he had bypassed the security protocols and set up the automatic transfers. My phone buzzed again. Cecily. Found something big. Need to see you ASAP. Can't talk on phone. I texted back quickly. Meet me at the house in 30 minutes. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. What had Cecily discovered? How deep did James's deception run? And most importantly, how would we use this information to bring him down? The half-packed boxes seemed to mock me as I paced the length of my living room, waiting for Cecily. So much for my clean getaway to California. Life had a way of demanding resolution before allowing new beginnings. The doorbell rang exactly 30 minutes after my text. Cecily stood on the porch, her face ashen, clutching a manila envelope. What's wrong? I asked, ushering her inside. Did James suspect something? She shook her head, too upset to speak. Instead, she handed me the envelope and sank onto the nearest chair. I opened it carefully, pulling out what appeared to be legal documents. My eyes widened as I scanned the contents. These are loan agreements, I murmured, flipping through the pages. In your name. Cecily nodded miserably. He's been using my credit. Taking out loans in my name without my knowledge. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. When did you find these? This morning, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. After he left for work. They were in a locked file cabinet in the basement. I broke the lock. I continued examining the documents, my alarm growing with each page. Personal loans. Credit cards. Even a second mortgage on their home, all in Cecily's name, all signed with her forged signature. He's put you in debt, I realized, the full extent of his scheme becoming clear. While using my money to maintain the illusion of wealth. Cecily buried her face in her hands. I'm ruined, Diana. My credit is destroyed. The business I've worked so hard to build. No, I interrupted firmly. You're not ruined. These are forgeries, just like the ones he used on my accounts. We can prove fraud. We can fight this. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. How? It could take years to clear my name. The Whitmore Project. We'll still be there, I assured her, though I wasn't entirely certain. Cecily, this is serious. James hasn't just stolen from me, he's committed identity theft against you. This is criminal on multiple levels. I know, she said, wiping her eyes. I can't believe I was so blind. So stupid. You weren't stupid, I said, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. You were manipulated by an expert. Was a financial analyst. He knows how to hide money, how to create paper trails that seem legitimate. He fooled lots of people, not just you. Cecily managed a weak smile. Are you defending me, Diana Thornfield? Maybe I am, I admitted, sitting beside her. Someone has to. I should have listened to you 3 years ago, she said softly. When you tried to warn me about him. The apology hung between us, unspoken but acknowledged. What matters now is stopping him before he does more damage, I said, returning to the matter at hand. These loan documents, combined with what I found today, give us everything we need to go to the police. What did you find? She asked, curiosity momentarily outweighing her distress. I showed her the offshore account information, explaining how James had used Alex Lambert to access Thornfield Holdings. So there are two of them, she asked, her expression hardening. Two men who conspired to steal from us. Yes, I confirmed. And they're both going to pay. Cecily stood, a newfound determination straightening her spine. What do we do now? Now, I said, gathering the documents, we confront James. Today. Her eyes widened. But we still have one more day before your deadline. We have everything we need, I cut her off. And after seeing these loan documents, I'm worried about what else he might do if we wait. He's desperate, Cecily. Desperate men make dangerous choices. She paled but nodded. You're right. But how do we do this? I considered our options. We need a controlled environment. Somewhere public enough that he won't make a scene, but private enough for a frank conversation. The Grayson Hotel, Cecily suggested after a moment. They have private dining rooms. I could tell him I made a dinner reservation to discuss wedding plans. Perfect, I agreed. Make the reservation for 7 o'clock. That gives us time to organize all our evidence. She hesitated, then asked, Are you sure about this, Diana? Once we confront him, there's no going back. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not just the woman who had betrayed me 3 years ago, but the girl who had once been my closest confidant. The one who had helped me through my first heartbreak, who had defended me against mother's criticisms, who had cheered the loudest at my law school graduation. I'm sure, I said decisively. It's time to end this charade once and for all. We spent the afternoon preparing our case, organizing documents, printing bank statements, and creating a timeline of James's deception. By the time we finished, the evidence against him was overwhelming and irrefutable. At precisely 6:45, we arrived at the Grayson Hotel. The private dining room Cecily had reserved was intimate but elegant, with dark wood paneling and muted lighting that created an atmosphere of quiet sophistication. He's on his way, Cecily said, glancing at her phone. He thinks we're discussing floral arrangements with the wedding planner. I squeezed her hand. Remember, stay calm. Let me lead. She nodded, her face a mask of determination despite the fear flickering in her eyes. At 7:05, the door opened. James walked in, his confident smile faltering when he saw me sitting beside Cecily. Diana, he said, recovering quickly. This is unexpected. Sit down, James, I commanded, gesturing to the chair across from us. He hesitated, glancing between us before complying. What's going on? Where's the wedding planner? I placed a folder on the table and slid it toward him. There is no wedding planner. There isn't going to be a wedding. What are you talking about? He laughed nervously, not opening the folder. $17,000, I said evenly. Every month for 3 years. From my account to yours. The color drained from his face. That's not all, Cecily added, her voice stronger than I'd expected. The loans, James. The credit cards. All in my name, with my forged signature. His eyes darted toward the exit. Don't, I warned. Security is watching the door. And the police are on their way. You're bluffing, he whispered. I pulled out my phone, showing him the text from Detective Harris confirming they were en route. It's over, James, I said. The only question now is how much worse you want to make it for yourself.